you and thank Bob Bullock for having me, and thank you all for coming. I know that it's probably you're just coming in here because it's raining outside, and so I appreciate it though anyway. I guess what I'm going to do is talk for about 30, 45 minutes or something, and then after that we're going to open it up for any questions and comments that you all might want to discuss or whatever. Again, Eric McCowan has been documenting a lot of this stuff, going around to a lot of the dance halls, and I really feel it's very important that we get this documented because so many people aren't familiar with it, and it's really a big part of our history of Texas. I came through it because I'm a music person. All my life since I was very young, I've always been very much into music, and I've owned nightclubs and many music venues over the years. And when as a youngster, my father also owned barbecue joints, and that has also been interwoven into this whole dance hall discussion. Many of these dance halls have barbecue pits on the back sides of them and stuff. So, but what's really important and what really got me interested in them in the very beginning was the music aspect. And I really don't feel that most people around the world, I believe, know Texas. One of the very important aspects of Texas they look to and remember and treasure and come to visit is because of our music. And I am convinced that the music would not be what it is today if it wasn't for these dance halls. Because these dance halls were the very first buildings in many of the communities that were built, and they in turn nurtured the music that we had. They were also very important in integrating the cultures together long before the politics and the other institutions that let the ethnic groups come together. Musicians always were looking to the other races and the other people that had immigrated into Texas, and that music kind of came together, and that's why in Texas music we have influences of German, Mexican American, African American, and all these other cultures that we've had that have immigrated to this state that we know as Texas. So it's very important, but also these halls a lot of times were, as it says in the thing in this book here, most of these very early dance halls were of German, Czech, and sometimes Polish origin, and that is because when they came over, they already had a history in their country in Eastern Europe that had similar halls like this. The thing that changed though was our climate was different, and a lot of times they adapted these architectural styles to help with the climate. That's why you see a lot of windows. You see the up here where the air can escape at the top, the cupolas, and also they built them. A lot of times they were also multifunctional halls in that they were maybe culture clubs, gun clubs, beat clubs. There were a lot of different reasons why these halls were built, but they always had a hardwood dance floor. So that was always, Saturday night always belonged to the dance. They had community affairs. If anybody, it was kind of like their community center. It's where they all came together, and as in the early days of Texas immigration, things were very tough, and so the cultures and the families and all the people in the community kind of gathered together, and this is where they talked about how we're going to do this. If there was a bridge out, they all met here. How are we going to do that? How are we going to get that bridge back together? A lot of beef clubs. Somebody would share a hog, and everybody would come down and get their piece. And throughout the year, they got a different piece of a hog every time they butchered a hog or a steer or something. So it was really the center of the community, and that's again another reason why they're so important in Texas history. Is they were the center of the communities. They kept these communities alive, and if it wasn't for these communities or these halls, the communities would have nowhere. They would not be able to share their ideas, even political rallies. I mean, there was all sorts of activities that went on in here. What's happened over the years, though, now they've become quite threatened for many reasons. Some of the reasons are just neglect. A lot of them are in the smaller communities, and the younger generation over the years have now fled to the bigger cities for jobs and careers and college and whatnot. I feel like since I've been doing this for about 15 years now going, I've been to over 800 halls personally. And what I see now, I'm starting to see a little bit of new interest, I believe, in these halls and people going back to them. Even a lot of people now, once their careers are over, or maybe they're beginning families and they don't want to raise their families in the bigger cities, they're coming back to the smaller communities and they're getting interested in these again. But one of the big problems has been for many years is that because they moved off, the older generation was the ones that were holding on to these halls. And they didn't change with the times. And so they would continue the same bands all the time, and the younger people didn't want to see those older bands. Their musical tastes were changing. But the problem I have found is that there are so many of these halls, and like if any of y'all are in the preservation community at all, you know how difficult it is not only to raise money, but then you find out more and more and more, and there's so many of these that need help. And I'm hoping that it continues, more and more interest in the halls continues to grow, so that we can, community by community, start saving these halls, because so many of them are falling apart, and they just have lack of, they need so much love and care, but not only physically, which a lot of them do, they need to be upgraded, you know, electrically and plumbing. I mean, there's a number of halls, because they were built before the turn of the century, don't even have indoor plumbing. And so a lot of them have to be physically helped, but also the older generation, these people that don't know how to run a successful dance hall in today's world. And that's another thing that we are trying to do, is trying to help get them a toolbox to where that they can learn to not only raise some money in their community and have some maybe also regional, state, federal funds go into to helping these, but also awareness in getting the younger generation involved too, so that they will be as passionate as I am and others, to where we can save these halls, and that's what we really need. So if you want to go ahead and run some of these, we'll go over a couple. In this book, this is a book a volume 1 in probably 5 books that I'm going to try to do. This one concentrates on what I call Eastern Central Texas, which some people have taken me to task over, but it's my designation. So 100 times I've had people come up to me and say, well, when I was a little kid, my mom and my dad or my grandmother and grandfather taught me how to dance here, and we'd sleep over in a corner or under a table, or a lot of the halls had benches around the walls, and they'd sleep under there or whatever. And because it was family, everybody was watching out for everybody's kids. It was very, very safe environment. Now the men, back then, if they wanted to drink, a lot of times the liquor wasn't even allowed inside the hall. And what you'll see is they started building these outdoor buildings where you could get drinks. And they looked a lot like the dance halls. They had the open flap windows, and they'd have somebody out there dispensing drinks. Or in the very early days, of course, the men would just have something in their boot or in their car or their truck or whatever, and they'd go out and sip drinks and hang out like men do, and, you know, talk about whatever. But it was always a very family thing, and because the community, kind of like what we're losing today, is that everybody knew everybody. They were kind of contained within that community. They couldn't go very far, you know, horse and buggy days and all that, and which is another great thing I noticed, is that we're a lot of in this area, about every 20 miles, you'll find another community and another dance hall. And there's a reason for that. That's about a day's ride on a horse. And so people would move off and create another community. And so most of the times you danced at the community you lived in. Now, a really great piece of something came across my desk one day. I was out in Deanville, and I love that, and I thought, I got to go to Deanville. And I heard about this round hall out there. And so I went out and I found the vice president of the bank that had a little branch of a bank out there. And the postmaster lady had told me that his grandmother had kept a diary and used to dance in the dance hall all the time. I said, well, I got to get that. And so I went and talked to him, and they had already had it put on, had it all on a CD and everything, and had it transcribed and all that kind of stuff. So I got a copy and I started reading it. It was the most fascinating piece of documents that I could find on dance halls. It was from about 1918 to about 1928, so about 10 years. And she documented every day of her life. Every Saturday she was at that dance hall. And she named all the names of the bands, which never made the newspaper. So it was like, this is saving history, you know, right here, all these dances and all these bands' names. And then in about 1926 or 7 or something, they got a car. And oh, what happened then? She started going to the next city and the next city, going to other dances. When she didn't like this band, she'd go to another dance, you know. And so all of a sudden, transportation opened up a lot for going to more and more dance halls. And of course, you know, on Mondays she's butchering a hog, or she's planting, or they're fixing the bridge. And it was a really tough existence, but they always celebrated in the halls. This Liebtafel is another singing society hall out in Belleville, beautiful hall. They've really taken it to their heart out there and preserved it. I believe there's a state historical marker on it. Small hall, holds about maybe 250 or something, which is another thing too. You'll see a lot of different, not only styles, but some of them are very modest, and it's because the community just had a few people and they didn't have a lot of money. So they would build modest halls, and sometimes they'd expand if the community got bigger and there was more money into the community. And then some people, maybe they did really well by selling their land, or the railroad came through and all of a sudden there was more money. And then you get to see these really, really bigger 1,000-seat dance halls and stuff like Ann Hall, which is one of my personal favorites. Down towards San Antonio off of 281, and they have a dance every month. This is Mixville. This was a very popular dance hall in the 40s and in the 50s, and now it just sits in, it's a storage barn. It's again a round hall, and you can see these windows here all the way around it, so they could open up and then let the air go through so that it wasn't so hot. And I think people are really getting a little too accustomed to air conditioning these days. What I hate seeing is a lot of these halls, is they go in and they drop the ceiling and put in, you know, the acoustical ceiling, and they start and pipe in air conditioning, and they kind of ruin the whole ambiance of the whole dance hall. I have now owned or managed 3 different halls in the last 10 years: Swiss Alp, Singleman, and Schrader. And Swiss is a perfect example. Swiss Alp Hall has, they put some heaters in there now, but there's no air conditioning. But I had a dance every Friday and Saturday night throughout the summer and throughout the winter. And there was maybe 2 nights in the whole year, and that was in the winter, that was uncomfortable. At night in Texas, if you open the windows and you got fans and you're pushing that air through there, and you're dancing and you're having a cold beer, cold soda, or whatever, it's not that bad. Yeah, you might sweat if you dance, but I mean, that's half the fun, you know? It's like, get out there and exercise. It's great exercise, and it's really not that bad. And when you're out in the country and you look out those windows and you see all these fields of hay and whatever, I mean, it's just something that I think once you get in them and you step in them, you'll want to go back again and again and again. It's just that special. And I think it's important too that these halls are helped and preserved and promoted, because it also promotes the community itself, the pride in the community. And around these halls, you can do a lot of things. You can say some kid gets cancer or gets in a car wreck. You can have your benefits there. A lot of these places have catfish dinners or something for the church, and they raise money for the church, and everybody utilizes these. It really can be the pride of these communities, and bring, I think, tourism back to the communities and help these communities thrive again. And certainly with everybody living in the big city and everything, it's nice to be able to get out. I spend almost all of my weekends driving out, because Austin, as you all well know, is getting pretty doggone crowded. So I go out and hear music during the week, but on weekends, I usually go out to the dance halls, and unfortunately, a lot of them aren't every week. A lot of them are monthly dances or something like that. But I'm always looking for that one hall I haven't found yet, so I'm always beating the bushes. Again, the music. The music started in these dance halls. That's where they all play. The majority of the music, German band tradition, later polka and that kind of music, then later country and western swing. All those started kind of melding together, using each other's influences. Today you'll hear country music with a lot of Mexican influence. You'll hear a lot of accordions. People are like amazed at how many people play accordions in Texas. You know, everybody thinks it's Lawrence Welk. Well, it's not. We have Zydeco, we have Bullock, we have a lot of different kinds of music that incorporate the accordion. And I don't think we would have the accordion in our vernacular if it wasn't for these dance halls. It saved that culture. And of course, with German sediment during the World War, a lot of that was pushed down and tried to run out of the public school systems, and you couldn't speak German, you couldn't do this. Well, these halls kind of saved that tradition, that heritage and everything, and it was, I think, very important. These halls nurtured and helped build our Texas music, but also our foodways. Barbecue was served, and certainly so many other traditions that dancing. This is probably the most dancing state in the United States. I mean, I've brought people over from Europe, and they've come over here and they've toured the whole country, and they say the closer they get to Texas, the more people are interested in the music and the more they dance. And I see young people all the time taking swing dance lessons, two-step lessons all the time. So it's our history, it's our tradition, and it's something that I think we are very unique here in Texas and lucky to have that tradition that's still alive. Because if you're in Eastern Europe or Japan or wherever, you can say, well, I'm from Nebraska or New Mexico, and chances are they're not going to know where that is. But if you say you're from Texas, they know where that is. And that's something very unique, and we need to hold on and help and promote, I think. And these Texas dance halls are we've saved the courthouses, we've saved the lighthouses. It's time to save the dance halls, I think. They're very important, they're beautiful, they're in Central Texas particularly, they're everywhere still. I don't know how many there ever was at one time. I know that there was at least a couple of thousand across the state at one time. You can go to, I was talking to you earlier, he's talking about there's probably just a couple in Iowa. There's a Czech population there, but very few. But here we've got, of the 800 that I've been to, they're not all historic like this. A lot of them are metal buildings and American Legions and different things like that. But they're continuing the dance tradition there and having dances. But there still are a lot, and there's one of our pet projects, me and Eric, is New Bern, which is just outside of town. It's a settlement up there that is very unique, and just before you get to Taylor, and there's a dance hall out there that's built in, I think, 1902 or 1910, somewhere in there, and it's just fallen down. There's an owl living in it, all the windows are out, and it's like the only one of that style in the whole state. And I'm thinking, why can't we say we need money, we need to save that, we need to fix it up, and we need to have it preserved for future generations to let them know where we came from. But a very famous band leader back in the 50s out of Taylor, Texas, recorded for many of the major labels. This is a dance at the Cotton Club up in Granger, again not too far from here. This was actually not originally a dance hall, but Bubba Cox was a band leader, a Western swing band leader, and he took one of the old buildings in downtown Granger and turned it into a dance hall, and they're very successful. Sunday afternoons, if some of you people that go to bed a little earlier go over, Sunday afternoons is packed. They have a great dance band over there. This is out in the middle of nowhere, like a lot of halls. This is inside. This is Cobar, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And just sitting out in the middle of the field, there's two things in the town. There's that, and then there's the church, beautiful church, by the way. This is Plum, and they have a sausage fest in June, and I buy about 100 pounds every year and freeze it. It's that good a sausage. They smoke it, stuff it, everything themselves. There, it's part of the church. a lot of the Catholic churches also had halls, and they didn't have problems with dancing. And
or beer and barbecue.
Same thing. They love the bar. Now this is, you'll see this a lot in the halls. This is a lot of them have these curtains, and sometimes they're just on the walls. But all the local merchants would pay a small fee and get their advertisement up there. And so every time you go to a dance hall, you'd see their names up there, you know. And they've got these beautiful, a lot of them were hand-painted curtains, and these people, I need to write a story on some of the writers or painters that did some of those. They go around from hall to hall and paint these really beautiful, like outdoorish, sometimes even like mountains and stuff, I guess reminiscent of the old country, and then have all these ads all around the mountains and stuff. Now this one, why don't you hold on this one a minute. This one is what I'd like to see done more often. There was a fellow by the name of Dana Harper, and he was an heir to one of the big estates over in Houston, the Cullum estate. And he, once we got our website up, and he contacted me and very sneakily came up to me and said, hey, I want to go on a dance hall tour, will you take me around? I said, yeah, sure. So we went around a couple of times, and then he said, you know, I've really got another motive. He says, I bought a dance hall, and I want you to run it for me. I want you to help me with it. I said, okay, I'll help you with it. What it was a two-story building dance hall. Downstairs, originally it was built of wood, and they had a little kind of cafe downstairs. And then the dance floor, which as you see right there, is upstairs. Beautiful place. It was made of wood, but they started fire in the cafe and burnt half the block down in Schulenburg. So they rebuilt it in about 1882 or something. And so they had, for many, many years, they had a bar downstairs, and it was very German. And in Schulenburg, I think at one time there was many, the downtown's only 4 blocks long, and there's like 17 bars or something. So the Germans like their beer. And, so the bar was downstairs, and they had, this was the place whenever they had a function. After the baseball team would play, a wedding, anything that needed a reception, they'd go here and have the reception up there. Now, we built that dance stage there. That wasn't there. But everything else was pretty much there outside the theater. So he came in, and it had been closed for about 30 years. And downstairs, a Western Auto had moved in, and they just trashed the place. It was awful. He spent over $1 million renovating that place. Today, it is spectacular. I really encourage you to go to Schulenburg. The downstairs now has a cafe. Wednesday nights are very popular. One of the local bands plays downstairs. It's a little downstairs stage too. And the place is packed on Wednesday nights. Friday and Saturday, if you're going to Houston or something, stop by. It's beautiful. But be sure and ask them to go upstairs, because it was virtually untouched since the 40s when we went in there. And it's just gorgeous. It's got these giant windows that overlook the street, both front and back. And he just did a marvelous job. And I just wish I could find about 30 Dana Harpers, because he did. He had a very good eye for exactly what needed to be done. There was no, you know, he kept the integrity of the hall completely by his renovation. And I just wish I could see more. This is Apples Hill Gun Club Hall, still standing out near Hallettsville. And they have annual gun competitions. That's what it looks like. It's just amazing. Which is an old gun club. They still have these shooting competitions all over Central Texas, and they use these rifles that are about this tall, and they build their own bullets in the whole 9 yards, and they have these targets like 100 yards out, and they're usually big mounds of dirt or something, and they shoot at these targets and have these competitions, and they crown a king and a queen for the coronation and all that kind of stuff, and then have a dance and stuff. But this one's very unique. What is it, 16 sides, or like, it's got multi-sides. It's very unique. There's nothing like Apples Hill anywhere else. Albert just was bought. They put it on eBay for a while, and it was bought, and then someone else bought it, and that's the hall, what it used to look like. It's a little changed, but not much. And they've got a little beer joint that they built next door where all the locals kind of hang out and just have a cold beer, and then they have a giant pecan tree out on the backside of that, people with a terrace and a patio and stuff. But, you know, this is virtually unchanged, and I'm pretty sure Lyndon Johnson probably spent some time in there. The school that he went to is just right behind that. This is one of the shooting clubs again. Now we filmed, you went over and filmed some of the shooting activity, right?
Yes.
Which is kind of scary. The first time I went, it's this big mound about 5 feet tall of ground, of just dirt, and there's a guy behind there. And they put up a target, and then they shoot at it, and they, okay, and then he stands up and tells them like how close they got to the target. Wow, I don't think I want that job. But, and see, these windows just flap this way. Now they flap this way, that way. Some of them go down. I've seen them sliding. There was those ones that airline we saw the other day that were in the middle, and they opened in the middle and out and outside. So this one, Twin Sisters, is one of the very oldest dance halls still standing, if not the oldest. 1870 it was built, older than Green Hall, so don't believe what you read. And they have them. This is Twin Sisters. Them and Ann Hall and Candelia Hall are kind of all close to each other. So they do alternating weekends. I think they do the first Saturday, and then Candelia does the second, and Ann Hall does the third. This is one of these. They pulled this out for us. Let us see that.
The president of the hall said that was only the third time he'd seen that unfurled in his life. So it's not something they do all the time.
Is Twin Sisters in Sisterdale?
No, it's near Blanco, just south of Blanco. And they just got a wine license there. Blanco is cut in half, and the top half of Blanco you could have wine, and the bottom half you couldn't. Weird Texas laws these days, but they finally have wine now too, so you can have wine. This is a Zydeco band that I had booked in there on Sundays for a while, trying to get them to do some more music.
Zydeco is another Texas origin that kind of got hijacked by Louisiana.
Yeah, well, somewhat. It's in that whole Golden Triangle area, you know. And this is Anhalt. This is the one it's very spectacular. Driving up on it, it doesn't look so much, but once you step inside and you see that ceiling of that bent wood, oh, it's just magnificent. And this is still run by the German Farmers Association, and they, being German, they're very particular. That floor shines. They've got it together. They can feed. I've done 2 benefits there with Asleep at the Wheel, and they fed 1,000 people, and nobody had that long of a wait at all. I mean, they got it together.
What was the name of that one?
Pardon? Anhalt. Down close to San Antonio, off of 281 and Spring Branch.
It's in a cow pasture. That's the funniest thing when you're riding up to it. You're like,
It pretty much
are we
is. They
sure
own
we're in the right
about
place?
20 acres or something out there, and always have. And at the end of the night, they take care of business. And when I went to get paid, to get the money to pay Asleep at the Wheel, they have a little office. And they had the whiskey back there. Once they got taken care of the business, they start, drinking a little bit of the whiskey. But they're very, very together people. And very traditional. They had Kevin Fowler in there one time and said, no more. Because all the kids, what happens, all the kids, they take their cans of beer and drop them on the floor, or, that kind of stuff. And you drop something on that floor and they're on you. And this is what's unique too in a lot of the halls is they're all built differently. And there was a exhibition at the University of Texas at the architectural school, a lady by the name of Krista Whitson, and there was a book. It's out of print now. She went in and did line drawings and photographs and stuff of the way these halls were built. So many of them were very intricate, particularly the round dance halls with all these trusses and different things going on up there. It's amazing to see what ingenuity these people have. A lot of these people that were tapped to build, and the whole community probably helped build, but there was generally some sort of a craftsman in the community to design these halls. And there's one guy that's famous, his name's Joaquin Hintz, that built, there's been a book by one of our former board members about the round halls. And he built like 3 very famous round halls out in Austin County. So.
Steve, you mentioned New Bern, and you said it's kind of unique.
Yeah, it's the only, let's see, it's Swiss in origin. And it's the only Swiss hall that I know of that's still standing. So you don't see a lot of Swiss and it turned into a German Sons of Herman later, because they were kind of the predominant hall owners and stuff in a lot of the halls. But it was originally built as a Swiss hall, and it's near where that Swiss church is out there in New Bern.
Steve, from the 40s to the 60s, the dance halls were connected for musicians like a touring circuit.
The 40s through the 60s is kind of the golden age of
Right.
touring and stuff. And there were certain, because it became a business and there became agencies that then would know this area, and so they started touring a lot of people through this. Now, a lot of people don't know it, but these dance halls were probably the most important early stages of Elvis's career. He played more in Texas than he did anywhere else, and a lot of it was because there was dance halls willing to book him into those venues. He also played high school gymnasium stuff, but again, it harkens back to that whole thing that Texas was really embracing music more than anywhere else. So even these Nashville people in the 40s and stuff were coming to Texas to mine these dance halls and these different places to play. And like he said, there was agencies. The very first African-American agency, Buffalo Booking, was out of Houston. And all of a sudden incorporated a lot of these halls, as well as what later became, more like honky-tonks and stuff that they used to play in as well. Because after World War II, people came back with lots of money. And all of a sudden you saw a proliferation of African-American halls, because for the first time, really, they had the income to build their own halls. And they were always, music was an integral part of their lives. So you saw all of a sudden, particularly in the urban areas where they had now migrated to, and that's why the Buffalo Booking Agency happened, was because an entrepreneur there decided, wait a minute, there's way too much talent going on here. We need to do something. And he wound up opening up his own record label and became one of the most famous of all African-American record labels in history. And it was Houston, Texas. So again, Texas is very important when it comes to music. People talk about Mississippi, people talk about New Orleans, Chicago. Texas is right along the side there, abreast of those three other places. We're very rich in musical history, and it's diverse too. It's from German to conjunto to zydeco to Western swing to you name it.
How much work have you done with the Historical Commission on trying to put together some?
I've tried to talk to them.
Or make it more knowledgeable for folks who are interested in touring the dance hall?
They need to do a lot more. I've talked to them on a couple occasions, and they had that handbook of Texas music book. It's huge. It's in the bookstore over here. But when they did the second edition, they called me and said, hey, can you do something? But it was like really close to the deadline. And I was only able to put 2 things in there about dance halls. But this subject needs so much more work, so much more research, so much more documentation, so much more help. And we're hoping the documentary really helps a lot, because so many people are visually oriented and don't buy books, read books anymore, these kids. And I doubt this will ever end up on Kindle or anything like that, but maybe the UT book might. The UT book is going to be this is more archival photo driven, whereas the UT book is going to be more text, and it's going to relate why these halls are important. A lot more text driven. It'll have 100 photos in it. But it'll be more talking about the community and the immigration patterns and how it all changed and how it is today that it's become so important and stuff. So, people from all over the world. I get people all the time calling me. I know people, bands and other folks from all over Europe and Japan and Australia. They come over here on a regular basis. Why? Because of the music and the culture. And we really Texas needs to step up and invest in our culture and our heritage, and help these smaller communities, and even the ones in Austin and Houston and Fort Worth and whatever, so that more and more people will come and enjoy what we have to offer. And it's an untapped resource that really needs a lot of help. And the legislature, yes, needs to help, And state, federal funding could help. They did it with the courthouses, they did it with the lighthouses, why can't they do it with the dance halls? Well, that's the thing about Mexican Americans is their culture is very dance oriented still to this day. A lot of Anglos and stuff have kind of like gotten too busy and forgot about dancing and whatever. A lot of these historic halls have been taken over by the Mexican Americans now. And as Des Hall is probably one of our very oldest dance halls in Austin, Texas. Still stands. It's not the original building, but it's still there, and it's now at the Hano Dance Club. The same with what they call the Casino Club. It was built in the 40s. It used to be the old Windmill or Big Hills, and then later the new Chaparral down in South Congress. That is now at the Hano Club or Mexican American Club. So they a lot of times just go in and take over because they have a community that's still dancing and still celebrating that music. It's a newer type of music a lot of times. Conjunto is kind of fallen by the wayside. Again, that's another thing that we need to address, I think, in the legislature is that these multi-corporate powers are coming in and taking over all the radio stations, and now you're not hearing as much regional music anymore. And so that is really killing a lot of the dance halls and stuff. Now you just have to go to a concert and stand there for $60 or whatever because they're bringing in this stuff that sells well in New York and Iowa and everywhere else. We need to celebrate our own heritage. You know, we need to support our local musicians and our local institutions, our nightclubs and our music venues and all that kind of stuff. So that's very important. Support live music.
Do you know what Conjunto musicians say about the accordion?
What do they say?
They say, we borrowed the accordion from the Germans, but we just never gave it back.
Right, exactly. Well, you know, and that's another thing that the beer industry, Germans brought it over here, and you go to Mexico, why are the Mexican beers so good? Germans. They went down there and started the beer industry down there. So again, it's a matter of that melding of cultures and everything that kind of happened here and nowhere else, you know.
Thanks, Steve.